Welcome to the Pursuit Chronicles, where tales of adventure, discovery, and passion unfold through every inspiring journey. Sophie Bennett hurried through Chicago's bustling loop, her worn boots clicking sharply against the icy pavement. The January wind stung her cheeks, tugging at her scarf as she checked her watch. 8:52 a.m. She was late again, and the thought sent a jolt of panic through her. Her boss, Mr. Caldwell, ran his marketing firm like a military operation, and tardiness was a cardinal sin. Sophie's string of small delays, missed trains, overslept alarms, had already earned her a series of stern warnings. "He's going to fire me," she muttered, her breath clouding in the frigid air. The city thrummed with life around her. Taxis honked, pedestrians jostled, and the distant rumble of the L train echoed overhead. Sophie's heart pounded, more from dread than exertion, as she wove through the crowd. She clutched her bag, mentally rehearsing excuses. "Mr. Caldwell, the train broke down," she practiced, but the words felt flimsy. Caldwell's piercing glare would see right through them. She tried another. "There was an accident on Lake Shore Drive." No, too dramatic. She bit her lip, frustration mounting. Sophie had moved to Chicago 2 years ago, chasing a dream of a career in marketing after graduating from a small college in Ohio. She'd grown up in a quiet town where everyone knew each other, and the city's relentless pace still overwhelmed her. Her job at Caldwell & Associates was her first real break, but it came with crushing pressure. Long hours, impossible deadlines, and a boss who seemed to thrive on intimidation left her perpetually on edge. She couldn't afford to lose this job, not with rent due and student loans looming. As she passed Rosie's Diner on Clark Street, the warm scent of coffee and bacon wafted out, stopping her in her tracks. Her stomach growled. She'd skipped breakfast to catch an earlier train that never arrived. "No time," she told herself, but her feet betrayed her. The diner's neon sign glowed invitingly, promising a moment of comfort. "Just a quick coffee," she reasoned. "I won't survive Caldwell without it." Inside, the diner was a cozy refuge from the city's chaos. The jukebox played a soft jazz tune, and regulars chatted over steaming plates. "Morning, Sophie," called Maria, the waitress, her smile warm as she wiped down the counter. "The usual?" "Please, Maria, and make it quick," Sophie said, sliding onto a stool. She rubbed her hands together, trying to thaw her fingers. "Rough morning?" Maria asked, pouring coffee into a to-go cup. "You have no idea. Caldwell's going to have my head." Sophie's voice trembled slightly, betraying her nerves. Maria slid the coffee over with a sympathetic nod. "On the house today. You look like you need it." "Thanks," Sophie said, managing a grateful smile. She left a $1 tip, more than she could spare, and hurried out, the hot cup warming her hands. Back on the street, Chicago's frenzy engulfed her again. She sipped the coffee, its bitterness grounding her as she dodged pedestrians. Her mind raced with apologies. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm so sorry. There was a delay on the red line." No, he'd heard that one before. She needed something airtight, something that would make him pause. But what? Then a flicker of movement caught her eye. Ahead, a man in a gray wool coat stumbled, clutching his chest. His face was pale, his eyes wide with panic. He staggered, grabbing a lamppost for support, then slid to the ground, his briefcase clattering beside him. The crowd barely noticed, parting around him like he was an inconvenience. Sophie's coffee slipped from her hand, splashing across the pavement. "He's sick," she whispered, her heart lurching. Without thinking, she sprinted toward him, pushing through the sea of coats and scarves. "Sir, are you okay?" she called, dropping $1.8 million for a woman kneeling beside him. The man's eyes were glassy, his breathing shallow. "Help!" he gasped, his hand trembling as it reached for hers. Before Sophie could respond, his body went limp, slumping against her. "Oh no, no, no." Sophie caught him, easing him to the ground. His skin was clammy, his pulse weak. "Somebody call 911, she shouted, but the passers-by only stared, some snapping photos with their phones. Fury and fear surged through her. "Please, someone help!" No one moved. Frantic, Sophie fumbled for her phone and dialed 911, her hands shaking. "A man's collapsed on Clark Street," she told the operator, her voice breaking. "I think it's a heart attack. He's barely breathing. Please, hurry." She gave the location, her eyes darting to the man's ashen face. "Hang on," she whispered, gripping his hand. "Help's coming." Minutes stretched like hours, the city's noise fading to a dull roar. Finally, sirens wailed and paramedics pushed through the crowd. "Possible heart attack," one said, checking the man's vitals. They moved with practiced efficiency, hooking him to a monitor. "You did good getting help fast," a paramedic told Sophie. "Can you come with us? He's got no ID and we need someone to fill in the blanks." Sophie hesitated, glancing at her watch. She was already 2 hours late, but the man's lifeless form tugged at her. "Okay," she said, climbing into the ambulance. Inside, the paramedics worked frantically, administering oxygen and medication. Sophie sat in the corner, her coat damp with sweat, watching the man's chest rise and fall unevenly. She didn't know him, but she couldn't leave him alone. At St. Luke's Hospital, the man, identified as Daniel Harper from a business card in his wallet, was rushed to the ER. Sophie waited in the sterile lobby, her mind reeling. Her phone buzzed with missed calls from work, but she silenced it. Hours passed before a doctor approached. "He's stable but critical," the doctor said. "You got him here just in time." Relief flooded Sophie, but reality crashed in. She was impossibly late. She caught a cab to the office, her stomach in knots. As she entered the sleek lobby of Caldwell and Associates, her co-worker Jen rushed over. "Sophie, where were you? Caldwell's furious." "I know," Sophie said, her voice hollow. She knocked on Caldwell's door, bracing herself. "Enter," he barked. Mr. Caldwell sat at his mahogany desk, his expression like stone. 3 hours late, Miss Bennett, on a day we're closing $1 million campaign. Explain." Sophie swallowed. "I'm sorry, sir. A man had a heart attack on the street. I called an ambulance and went with him to the hospital. He would have died otherwise." Caldwell's laugh was cold. "A saint, are we? While you were saving strangers, we nearly lost a client. I need reliability, not heroics." "He was alone," Sophie said, her voice shaking. "I couldn't. Just walk away. You could have called. You didn't." He leaned back, his decision final. "You're terminated. Clear your desk." The words hit like a slap. "You're firing me?" Sophie whispered, tears stinging her eyes. Immediately, he turned to his computer, dismissing her. Numb, Sophie packed her belongings. A photo of her parents, a chipped mug, a notebook filled with campaign ideas. Each item felt like a piece of her crumbling dream. Jen hugged her, whispering, "I'm so sorry," but it didn't soften the blow. Outside, Chicago's skyline loomed, vast and indifferent. Sophie had done the right thing, but it cost her everything. That night, in her cramped apartment, Sophie lay awake, the city's hum filtering through her window. She'd lost her job, her savings were meager, and rent was due in 2 weeks. Her parents had offered to help, but she couldn't bear the thought of moving back to Ohio, admitting defeat. Her thoughts drifted to Daniel. Was he awake? Did he have family? On impulse, she called the hospital. "Daniel Harper's in the ICU. Stable but unconscious," the receptionist said. Sophie hung up, a strange urge pulling at her. The next morning, she returned to St. Luke's, finding herself outside room 312. Daniel lay still, surrounded by beeping machines. His face was pale but calm, his chest rising rhythmically. Sophie pulled up a chair, feeling oddly at peace. "Hi, Daniel," she said softly. "I'm Sophie, the one who called the ambulance. I just wanted to see how you're doing." She began visiting daily, finding solace in the quiet room. She talked about her life, her small-town roots, her struggles. In Chicago, the sting of losing her job. "I don't know why I'm here," she admitted one day, her voice cracking. "Maybe because you're the only one who doesn't expect anything from me." As days turned to weeks, Sophie's situation grew dire. Job applications went unanswered, and her landlord left stern voicemails. One morning, sitting by Daniel's bed, she held his hand, her eyes brimming. "I might have to leave Chicago," she confessed. "I can't afford to stay. But I'm glad you're still fighting." She squeezed his hand, then stood. "Goodbye, Daniel." As the door closed, Daniel's fingers twitched, a faint sign of life. Days later, in room 312, Daniel's eyes fluttered open. The hospital lights were blinding, his body heavy. A nurse rushed in, exclaiming, "Mr. Harper, you're awake!" As doctors assessed him, Daniel's mind churned. He remembered, a voice gentle, steady, pulling him from the void. "Who was with me?" he asked, his throat dry. "A woman named Sophie Bennett," the doctor said. "She brought you here and visited daily. But she said she's leaving the city." Daniel's chest tightened. She'd saved him, stayed by him, and he'd never seen her face. "Find her," he said, his voice firm despite his weakness. "I need to thank her." The hospital staff tracked Sophie to a modest apartment building. Daniel, still frail, insisted on going. A nurse drove him, and as they pulled up, he saw her, a woman with dark hair and tired eyes, carrying a box to a waiting cab. "Sophie!" he called, stepping out with a cane. She turned, stunned. "Daniel?" The box slipped, and she caught it, her face a mix of shock and relief. He approached, his eyes bright. "I heard you," he said, his voice hoarse. "Your voice. It kept me alive. You saved me." Sophie blinked, tears welling. "I just did what anyone would." "No," Daniel said, shaking his head. "You stayed. Most wouldn't." He pulled an envelope from his coat. "I'm Daniel Harper, CEO of Harper Solutions. I want you to work for me." Sophie stared at the envelope, dazed. "A job? But I'm just—" "You're extraordinary," he interrupted. "Compassionate, quick thinking. I need that on my team." Weeks later, Sophie sat in Harper Solutions' glass-walled office, learning the intricacies of corporate strategy. Daniel mentored her, his patience easing her insecurities. She thrived, her small-town grit shining in a world she'd once thought unattainable. Late nights became routine, the two bonding over coffee and contracts. One evening, as they reviewed a proposal, Daniel set his papers aside. "Sophie, before my heart attack, I was running on empty. Work, deals, nothing else. You changed that." "You reminded me what matters." Sophie met his gaze, her heart stirring. "I was lost too. You gave me a chance I didn't deserve." Their eyes locked, a quiet understanding passing between them. Daniel reached for her hand, his touch warm. "I'm falling for you, Sophie," he said softly. "I don't know if you feel the same, but I had to say it." Sophie's breath caught, but a smile broke through. "I do," she whispered, "but I need time. This is all so new." He nodded, his smile gentle. "I'm not going anywhere." As they left the office, Chicago's lights sparkled below. Daniel held her hand, a simple gesture that felt like a promise. Sophie knew the road ahead was uncertain, but with Daniel beside her, she was ready for whatever came next. Thank you for joining the Pursuit Chronicles. Keep chasing your dreams and explore new horizons with us.